The OECD has lowered its outlook for global growth. It says a key factor in its assessment is a significant drop in investor and consumer confidence. Joining me from Paris is the OECD's chief economist, Carlo Padoan. Mr. Padoan, first off, we'll get to the report in a second. I just want to get your reaction to the EU and IMF deal struck for Greece last night. What's your reaction?
Well, it is a major step forward to address the Greek problem. But of course, it all is about implementation. Implementation of the measures in this first phase to bring the debt down, including the buyback operations, and implementation of the second phase when EU countries commit themselves to do something more in the future if there is need to be further measures to address the debt. And of course,
I presume you're talking about debt write-downs.
Well, I'm talking about measures that they have committed to take to bring the debt further down beyond the target of 124% of GDP, if that need be. And of course, that is conditional about implementation by the Greek authorities of their fiscal adjustment and structural reforms. So, a good deal, it has to be implemented well.
Okay, on to your outlook. You've lowered your forecast for the Eurozone GDP next year. You see a contraction, a minimal contraction of only minus 0.1%. Isn't that still too optimistic still?
Well, we thought that we were a bit on the pessimistic side. Of course, this is new with respect to 6 months ago, where we had brighter figures for the Eurozone and the global economy. We are confident, however, that if there's no major shocks in the euro area and if there are moves towards strengthening the policy framework, including addressing debt issues, then the eurozone is bound to slowly return to aggregate growth by the end of next year, beginning of 2014.
Of course, it's not just economics and finance there that's going to be a big issue for Europe next year. We have a lot on the political front as well, elections in Germany and Italy, for example. How did you factor those risks into your forecasts?
Well, those risks are there because if there is no continuity in the adjustment process in countries facing elections, especially the southern countries, members of the Eurozone, then confidence might drop in financial markets, and that could spark off varying negative reactions. So we take that into account, for instance, by looking at a downside scenario, which could describe a very negative situation if confidence is lost by markets.
Okay, you're much more optimistic on the United States. 2% growth next year and 2.8% growth in 2014. Is that sustainable given the weakness elsewhere around the world, particularly the Eurozone and Japan?
Well, first of all, those forecasts for the US assume that the fiscal cliff is resolved. So that's a big if, and we do definitely hope that that's the case. Secondly, we would like to see that embedded into a medium-term fiscal consolidation program for the U.S. fiscal situation, which is in bad need. However, if that happens, then the U.S. might pick up growth even more than we forecast, and that would be good for the global economy.
Just to finish up, you say that investor and consumer confidence is being undermined largely because of the disjointed and sort of essentially poor policy response to the crisis around the world. In your opinion, what's the biggest risk for the global economy from a policy error perspective?
The biggest risk remains the euro area, but next to that is the US fiscal cliff. Both issues are to be dealt with strongly by policymakers. This is where the difference comes in, and policymakers could make a big deal of difference around the world. Okay.
Mr. Padoan, thank you very much. That was Mr. Carlo Padoan, Chief Economist at the OECD in Paris. I'm Jamie McGeever. This is Reuters.